Now I want to compare function constructors and ESS classes in order to make you better understand difference between them. On the left side you see function constructor called myConstructor. As usually it is regular function, and here we use regular function declaration. Here we define properties for new instance of this function constructor, and using new keyword and function call with props argument, we create new instance of myConstructor. And after this, new object with two properties, title and quantity, will be created, and its proto property will point to what? To myConstructor.prototype. If I will convert same code into ESS classes, I will get this result. So let's suppose that we will rename it to myClass, and as you notice here, this entire function will migrate into constructor method of this myClass. Props remain here, and inside of the body of this method there will be same two statements. This title equal to props title and this quantity equal to props quantity. And remaining part of the code remains unchanged. So here we create new instance of myClass in the same way as with function constructors. We use new keyword, then name of the class, and here we pass properties as argument. Please notice that you can add several parameters either here in this function constructor or here inside of the constructor method of the class. I mean that you can add here two parameters, title, quantity, and here don't use new variable props and pass title, test title, and quantity 5 directly here as arguments. But it's a good practice to use separate object with properties for every instance that you create using either classes or function constructors. That's why in this course I show you only this way. In all previous examples and in the next examples there is separate object with properties for the instance, and I simply pass to the constructor function or ESX class this props object. Also here in the constructor method or in this function, instead of props in the parameters list, you can use object destructuring. What I mean? Instead of props here will be object literal, and here will be title, quantity. And here instead of props.title will be simply title, and instead of props.quantity will be simply quantity, like this. And in this case you don't add new props variable here inside of the function, and you directly use variables title and quantity. But let's get back to previous variant in order to be consistent here. Let's now summarize. In those two blocks of code you perform the same action. You create new prototype chain, and it is in this case myConstructor object null, and in this case it is myClass object null. And when you create instance of myConstructor or myClass, this instance will point to exactly the same prototype. And those instances that you create using myConstructor function here or myClass here will be in fact equal. They will have two own properties, title and quantity, they will not have any methods, and their proto property will point to the same object. Okay, but what if you want to add method to the prototype? Let's look at the next example. In this example, on the left side, you see variant with function constructors. And remember that if you want to add method that will reside only in the prototype and will be available for all instances of this prototype thanks to inheritance, you need to add this method as property of the prototype, like this. And you must do this separately from the function declaration. Here is function declaration, and here you add new info method to the prototype. And it will be available for all instances of this prototype. For example, if you will call this function like this, let me add here new line. So new instance dot info function call, and here I will get quantity is 5. Okay. You can achieve same result with classes, but here you set up everything in one place, in the class. And now there are two methods, constructor and info. And in this case, result will be exactly the same as here with those two blocks of code. This info method will be method of myClass.prototype. And you will be able to call this info method here on this new instance, same as here. Please notice that in this class declaration there are no such keywords as prototype, proto, or function. Prototypes with methods are created here automatically behind the scenes, and you need to specify only list of methods here. But what about extension of another prototype? How it looks like in classes? Let's look at the next example. Here it is. And this example shows that ESS classes really shine if you compare them with function constructors. And this example shows real simplicity of the classes. So, in this block of code, we create two constructors, parent constructor and my constructor. And parent constructor.prototype should be prototype for my constructor.prototype. And remember that you need to perform 3 steps if you want to make parent constructor prototype of my constructor. First step, you need to reassign prototype property of my constructor, and you need to use object.create for that and pass here parent constructor.prototype as argument. Next, you need to create new property constructor of the prototype property of my constructor and assign function itself. And third, you need to call parent constructor function inside of the my constructor function. And this step is required only if you set additional properties of each instance in the parent function. And here you call parent function with 2 arguments, this and props. That's how this happens with function constructors. Let's now look at this block of code. And here same is achieved using 2 short keywords, extends and super. Here we create parent class and it has one method constructor. And inside of this method we set quantity property of each instance. And here my class simply extends parent class. And in the constructor method of my class, following actions are performed. Let's look at this line, super parenthesis props. Super is reserved keyword in ESS classes. And if you use such syntax, you call automatically constructor method of the parent class that is used here on this line. In our case, my class extends parent class, and super here will automatically call constructor method of the parent class. And you can pass here also arguments. And in this example, we pass props as an argument because here in this constructor method, we refer to the props in order to assign new property to the instance of the class. Important notice, even if you don't set any additional properties inside of the parent class, you must add here super call. And in this case, you can call it simply without any arguments. But in this example, we set additional property here in the parent class, that's why super is called with argument props. And on the next line, we set own property title for each instance of my class. That's that simple. Simply 2 keywords, extends and super. And if you want to create child class of the my class, you perform same action. Syntax will be following: class, child class, extends, my class, and so on. Let's summarize. With function constructors, you need to perform several weird actions. This one, and function call here. And you see here such keywords as prototype, constructor, call, object.create, and so on. Here, you don't see any such keywords, simply 2 keywords, extends and super. No prototype, no object.create, nothing. But result in both cases will be the same. On those lines, you will create new instance that will be object with 2 properties, title, and quantity. If you want to add any methods to the parent class or my class, you can do this directly in the corresponding class, and we have discussed this in the previous example. But with function constructors, you need to assign those methods as new properties of the prototype of corresponding function. Okay, let's here end those theoretical talks and let's jump into the coding and look at some examples of ESX classes. See you after the pause. Bye bye.